I can't believe it's already the final session. So we're glad to have everyone been joining us throughout this fall. Hopefully you've gotten some great tips and resources out of the series and are continuing to practice self-care as we head into the holiday season. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. If you need subtitles or closed captions, please use the CC button in your Zoom menu below. You can turn on or off the subtitles in that menu. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function. Let us know. The panelists are here for you. We'll help get you sorted out. And if you have any questions during the webinar for Amanda at the end, please use the Q&A function. If someone has a question similar to yours, please use the little thumbs up button to vote to have the most similar questions populate to the top, and we will do our best to answer all the questions at the end of the session. So without further ado, today we're going to talk about motivation, strategies to embrace the holidays and flourish in life's unpredictable moments with Amanda Fox, who is a health and wellness coach at the Ohio State University Health Plan. So thanks for joining, everyone. Let's welcome Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Did you want to go over the skills for this last week as well before I get started?
Typically, that would be something the speaker would cover.
Okay. Well, just then letting everyone know that there is a reminder of what was covered last week in week 5. So if you're looking to kind of revisit some of those, we have these here in the presentation for you. I'm going to be talking about some new skills today for motivation. So thank you again for having me. I will turn my video on at the end when we do the Q&A. But for now, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself a little bit. As you said, I'm a health coach with the OSU Health Plan. We work with the faculty and staff of OSU and the Med Center who are benefits eligible, and any dependents who may be on the health plan with the employees. And I talk about motivation a lot, so I'm really excited to be doing this presentation with all of you today. And I also wanted to acknowledge that, you know, we're talking about motivation around the holidays, and, you know, the holidays can mean so much this time of year. There are a lot of different religious holidays, cultural observances around November and December that can bring a wide variety of traditions, activities, and emotions to the forefront for many people. And even if you don't personally celebrate any particular dates this time of year, we still have the season change. There's a new year coming, you know, with, you know, new possibilities, and all of this can feel really significant to us this time of year. So my hope today for this topic is, you know, whatever the holiday or the season means to you, you will find something in our discussion that helps you connect to what you find joyful, meaningful, and supportive for your well-being. So let's get started. I always like to start with just defining what we're talking about. So to go over motivation, motivation is the force that activates, directs, and maintains goal-oriented behavior. So it's really about what drives our action. There are biological, emotional, social, and cognitive forces behind our motivation. And often we need a strong desire or enthusiasm for our goal and an energy behind our behaviors to fully support our motivation. So why are we talking about motivation around the holidays? Because there are things that we usually want and need to do year round that often get disrupted this time of year. Because there's a lot of potential change this time of year. Our daily routines and schedules change to account for all the special holiday happenings. Here in Ohio, we're also embarking upon the season change. And again, we've got the New Year's coming, where there's all sorts of new possibilities that could be just right around the corner. And change, for better or worse, means that our habits need to adapt, and that our routine behaviors may require more effort to remember and perform them than they usually do, which means that we need to tend to our motivation more than usual, because there's going to be a lot disrupting it and kind of getting in the way sometimes. And that it kind of brings me to the next point, which is motivation is not fixed. Sometimes I think we like to think about it as though we have it or we don't. But that's not really true. It doesn't have to be this fleeting thing. It's kind of always with us, but it is drained or replenished by the events of our day. So there are some things that can really sort of charge up that motivational energy. And there's other things that it just seem to kind of like bring it down, wear it down. So when we're talking about motivation, what I'm usually talking about is like trying to take care of it, tending to it, recharging a little bit. So we have that energy behind our actions again. What that might look like is if you're going through something where that motivation is being drained on a regular basis, it means that sometimes the daily or weekly targets you start to focus on are not about the goal-directed behavior itself. So for example, it may not be about strictly following that nutrition plan or adhering perfectly to the established workout routine. Instead, when we're talking about tending to our motivation, it may be about reconnecting with why you have a nutrition plan in the first place, or why you're trying to work that workout routine. And just making sure you have all the internal and external resources you need to adapt and follow through on your plans, regardless of any change or temptation that might come up this time of year, any time of year. Now, what's great about what we will call holiday season is that there are lots of things to maybe feel energized about and to help us reconnect to what's important. The end of the year is often a time of gratitude and celebration of what's good in life. We might have more opportunities for relaxation and connection with people we care about. It can also be a time of reflection as we transition into that new year and start to get excited about, what could come. But as I mentioned before, the other side of this time of year, it isn't all pleasantries. Sometimes holiday season can be downright stressful. It can sometimes be painful. There's been a lot of loss over the past year and a half, and many may feel grief more acutely this time of year. There may be more special events. We may be seeing family and friends we don't see all the time. There could be travel, and this all can add to an already busy schedule. And that can bring increased stress and frustration and things like that. And all these types of extras in our schedule, any unpleasant feelings that might come up, those are the types of things that can drain our motivation. And of course, sometimes there's overindulgence along with celebration. So lots of opportunities to maybe stray from health and wellness goals because there's more temptation around. So our motivation and our self-discipline have to work overtime on top of having some of that energy drained while we're trying to navigate all of this. So really, this is a great time of year to be thinking about motivation because, again, there's lots that can be taking away from it or disrupting it, but there's also a lot we can connect to that can help us recharge it as we try to stick to our health routines. So when I am working with people on motivation, I kind of come from the perspective that motivation will decline, right? Sometimes we get things started when that motivation is really high, our energy and our desire for it is really high. But as we work on things, it's going to come down a little bit. Things will drain it. We just might lose a little of that gusto. There's going to be days we don't feel like following through on our goals. What we want to do then is, in kind of accepting that, even expecting it, really focus on what are the things that can replenish that motivation. And there's several that I'm going to go over today. We'll kind of go through them one by one. So staying connected to your why, having a plan, celebrating steps, kind of knowing your style and having a variety of sources, being able to savor what's going well, what's feeling good, and self-compassion to kind of help when things get tough. So starting with staying connected to your why, I would say this is a a big part of our motivation. I always say, if you get to a point in any effort where you're like, why am I even doing this? What was I thinking? You should stop and answer that question. Staying connected to these reasons for implementing the plan or the change in the first place can help us remember why it felt important. So before special occasions or busy seasons like the holidays, set aside some time to review or rewrite something like a wellness vision and really reflect on what's important behind that vision. What do you expect to gain or do or enjoy if you stick with this plan? If you want to see a great example of staying connected to the reasons for health goals, I've linked a video on this slide. You'll be able to access it from the PDF version of the handouts on the website. I'm not going to play it today. We just don't have time to watch the whole thing. But it's a great example. Basically, this older man, a grandfather that we discover, he starts this big workout plan with a kettlebell that he struggles through all the way to the end so that he can lift his granddaughter up to the tree, the Christmas tree, so she can place a star on the top of it, something that he was, a gift he gave her and something he was looking forward to. And it's those little moments of connection, sometimes being able to do what we want to do with our loved ones, with our life, our time and our energy, that are sometimes behind some of these health goals. So that can be our motivation to stick with it when it's feeling hard. Since it's easy to get busy and distracted this time of year, I often recommend people create reminders of that why in key spaces and to show up at important times. So these reminders can be visible physical reminders, they can be auditory alerts. You can even recruit people around you to remind and encourage you so you can have those important reasons at the forefront. As I mentioned, next is have a plan. So kind of like the vision, write out a plan before the holidays begin. You want to think through, like whatever you're trying to have some motivation to do, sort of think through what those things are going to look like on a day you feel good, when your energy and your motivation is high. It is easier to expect good things from yourself on those days when you're already feeling good. And since another component of motivation is energy, your plan should be centered on protecting your energy through these seasons that bring a lot of change and adaptation. So consider things that you can do to prepare before big events or busy weeks, or to prevent overwhelm and difficulty. Remember, even really fun activities can be draining if they're really different from the norm. So whether things are feeling enjoyable or stressful, build some time and a plan to recover from special occasions. That's going to help keep that energy up to do some of the more routine things that you want to stick with. You can also plan ahead on how you want to deal with people around you, because I know other people can sometimes be bad influences or maybe just disruptors of our best intentions. So set expectations early, communicate your plans and any boundaries you want respected up front. And spend some time thinking through refusal strategies. If, for example, there's a reason this year that you've decided you needed to politely decline an aunt's special dessert, for example, you might want to think through how you want to say that before it comes up at the dinner table. Now, these plans you make in advance, they are not meant to be followed perfectly. The goal of the plan is not perfection. It's about preparation. So you can start by kind of thinking through past holiday seasons, what may have gotten in the way of plans before, what impacted motivation in the past. And by sitting down to write these plans out early, you're really trying to do a favor for your future self. So on a good day, make some decisions, do some problem solving now. In the spirit of contingency planning, right? If this happens, I'll respond this way, because there's going to be a really good chance that your future self is going to feel tired or distracted or tempted, and you may not be in the best frame of mind to make those on-the-spot decisions in the future. So you want to try to work out some of those details in advance. And again, write it down so you have a reference when you're feeling good, because then you can look to that and remember, oh, these were my intentions. That can sometimes help us stay motivated to stick with a plan because we don't have to work so hard to remember what it is. I've provided some reflection questions that could help with planning for things like schedules, self-care, food. You might also want to think about sleep, physical activity, handling temptations. There's all sorts of things that you might want to plan for. And I recommend, again, think about what you really want to do for your health and wellness through the end of the year, and what type of plan is going to work for you. I know navigating certain temptations around the holidays. I talk to a lot of people in coaching about like the overindulgence that can occur and like all the sweets that can sometimes be around through the holidays. So I've linked two of my favorite articles that speak to navigating temptations here on the slide. The spoiler of reading these is that you shouldn't rely on willpower alone. Navigating temptations more about managing your environment and planning ahead if you can. And again, really staying connected to some intentions, those plans in advance. So the decision making isn't as hard when you're faced with lots of offers that maybe you need to be choosy about. And the other thing I recommend for planning is whatever your health goals are, to come up with a menu of safe options for your goals. Now, safe in this case stands for small steps, accessible, familiar, and enjoyable. So let's say you're super busy, you're traveling, or maybe you just want to let loose and enjoy a little, and you're finding it hard to stick to some plan that you follow other times of the year. Instead of letting the plan go altogether, come up with some small, simple actions that you can follow through on that maybe are not exactly what you usually do, but that you consider good enough for a special circumstance. So for example, maybe you're someone who usually goes to a 1-hour workout class, a time or two a week. But while the family's in town, you don't think you're going to be able to make it to that. So choose to opt for a walk around the block and catch up with those loved ones instead of going to the class. The thing about motivation here, it's not so much about, in this example, the physical activity. It's about choosing to make that swap in advance. When it comes to motivation is often connected to some of our emotional energy and our mental capacities, and it is going to feel better if you have planned to make that swap. So intending, versus intending to get to the class and not making it, because we tend to feel bad when we don't hit those marks. And that negative emotional experience is going to drain that motivation. It's going to start to feel defeating if it happens, more and more. So if you can go into your plan saying, I'm going to make these intentional swaps because I think it'll make sense for this time of year, and I'll get back to this other activity later, that just psychologically feels a lot better. It's going to protect that motivation. And this kind of leads to our next tip then, is celebrating your steps. As I said, psychologically, we feel kind of down when we're not meeting our goals. And if we're not meeting those, it could be that things are in the way. Maybe the goal we set is still sort of a ways off and we start to get discouraged. So it helps if you celebrate steps you're taking in addition to any outcomes that you achieve. And this is because of how habits form in our brain. And I've linked some videos on this slide that you can explore to better understand like that and the habit loop. But just briefly for today, basically behavior that's rewarding is easier to repeat. We don't have to have as much effort and energy behind it when it's really enjoyable. And to really support that habit formation, we need that reward to hit during the behavior or immediately after the behavior is completed. So for example, if your goal is to maintain weight throughout the holiday season, measured by a weigh-in on January 1st, Great. You can plan some reward for yourself in January when you achieve that goal. But if part of your weight maintenance plan is to get 30 minutes of physical activity at least 5 days a week, for example, then you also want to acknowledge and celebrate that step taken every time you're engaged in that physical activity. And again, I would say celebrate it when you hit that 30 minutes, but also if it's 15, especially if that 15 minutes happened on a day where you felt like not doing it at all, your motivation is going to be far better protected if you focus on what you are doing versus what you're not doing. I have kind of gathered some examples of things you can do to celebrate. Basically, we don't need grand rewards to make this work for motivation. Sometimes just acknowledging our progress and feeling successful is enough to do the trick. So this slide here has some suggestions of how you can celebrate. Like you could just tell yourself, good job. Imagine giving yourself a high five. Do a little celebratory dance, whatever you want to do to acknowledge the action you've taken. If results motivate you, you like to see results, but maybe the most desired results are kind of a ways off. You want to try to focus on more immediate results. So that could be things like improved mood or energy, enjoying what you're doing, feeling productive, whatever happens, again, right during or after whatever behavior you're trying to be motivated for. And remember, sometimes for our wellness goals, we need to say yes to things like maybe following through on a workout. But sometimes we also want to say no to things. We want to have a little less of something in our life, but we're trying to bring more of something else. So you want to celebrate the yeses and the nos. You'll feel a lot more energized for your efforts if you can notice and acknowledge every little choice that's in line with your plan, even if it was only one choice that felt good in the middle of a really rough day. Again, so focus on what's going well, less on what's not. You also want to consider your style of motivation and surround yourself with motivators from a variety of sources. The source of motivation can be intrinsic, that's coming from within, such as your wellness vision, positive emotions, like we've talked about, the desire we have, anything that connects to our values. Motivators can also be extrinsic, so outside of you, that could be other people, money or incentives, inspirational role models, maybe getting positive feedback or any kind of pleasantries that make an action enjoyable. That could be like good music on a walk. As far as style, I kind of encourage people to think deeply about those reasons for making a change or having a health goal. One thing to consider is, are you trying to gain something positive from this effort, or are you trying to avoid something negative? Both can be sources of motivation. Sometimes we tend to gravitate towards one or the other. And kind of to this point, another way I like to talk about it is, are you taking action out of fear or out of love? You can be performing the same action, say choosing to decline that special dessert at holiday dinner because for whatever reason that seems to fit with your plan. But choosing to decline that dessert because you fear weight gain versus turning it down because you know you'll sleep better or you'll feel better if you do. Those reasons impact our energy differently. Fear is a really draining emotion. It can certainly be motivating. It sometimes gets us started on something, but it's not a sustainable source of motivation in the long run. So feelings like care, compassion, and love are replenishing and can actually help reduce stress and recharge energy while we're trying to maintain a certain behavior. And because positive emotions are really good for us, it's helpful to leverage them in stressful times. So, a great way to kind of manage some stress is to really shift your attention to what is really pleasant and positive around you. It could be some lovely holiday decorations, maybe something you're feeling grateful for, and you really want to savor it. So try to consider at least 3 specific details of whatever positive thing you've noticed and really stay with that good feeling for a little while. That's going to shift our energy. It's actually really good for our nervous system to feel positive things. So staying with that can kind of calm and center you from the inside out and help you kind of regroup if there has been a disruption before you go on making choices or trying to continue with plans. I've shared some more information about gratitude and a little gratitude exercise. If you'd like to work on that this holiday season, we have a whole holiday for gratitude coming up here really soon. So 'tis the season for this type of practice. And my final tip is just to consider self-compassion. Self-compassion means noticing when you're struggling and responding to your own difficulty like you would respond to a good friend going through a hard time. This is really important because, again, if we operate on the assumption that sometimes our motivation will be low, there will be mistakes, there will be distractions and hardships, we want to know that we can meet those tough moments with kindness, with compassion, that mistakes are okay. You want to make it safe for yourself to make the occasional mistake, to learn from it and try again, knowing that you will be there for yourself with support no matter how things go. That's going to encourage you to repeat the behavior when it becomes safe to not be perfect. And since I know self-compassion can sometimes be new or unfamiliar to folks, sometimes challenging, I have outlined some do's and don'ts, like what could this really look like in practice? And on the slide before, I had the website that you could visit for a lot more information. I've provided then a summary here of our steps today. As you think about motivation, I know we have just a few minutes left. I'm happy to stay on. I flew through that information, so I'll stay on and answer questions if we have any.
If anyone has any questions for Amanda, please throw them in the Q&A. One person was asking if you could go back to the do and don't do slide.
I think so. Let's see here. There you go. And again, these handouts will be on the website. So if you'd like to access any of the resources, get some of this for yourself, please visit that and download those so you have the resource. I tried to make them informational so you have that reference if you need it.
Can motivation be not a tank that empties, but a snowball that grows?
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it. Because and that's the point of celebrating the steps, the small steps, is when we feel successful, our confidence grows, our energy grows, we get a little more excitement around the effort. And that's going to encourage us to do the thing more and more and more. Very different than trying and feeling like we failed, trying and hitting a hardship, right? That gets really defeating and discouraging. So it can definitely go both ways. And the more we can add some like positive emotion and success around the steps we're taking, the more that motivation can grow.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. It's hard to stay motivated in these times when there is so much negative news and general polarization. I find myself angry a lot of the time with motivation that isn't necessarily positive. Maybe the best thing to do is focus on the personal. That's the question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, what I would kind of say to that is I think over the past year and a half, we've had to be a lot more intentional about our information diet. What are we taking in? when and how much, just like we have to think about our different nutrients and things like that. And I think everyone has different like windows of tolerance for, what's out there and how much we engage with it. So kind of knowing what your limits are, just like, say with food, for example, and kind of managing your energy based on how much you engage with some of that. You don't want to be uninformed, but I think we do have to be choosy about where we get information from and when and how we engage with it. And so then when you're not checking some of that news, definitely refocusing on yourself, your little kind of sphere of influence, and maybe just trying to balance negative things with positive. The news in particular, because of our negative attention bias, it plays to the negative stories because it wants to keep our attention. So we sometimes have to work harder to find the good news. And that's what I would do. Find it in your own life, find it out there in the community. It's not about ignoring what's going on, but just balancing it out so you can, see both sides. They're there, but sometimes we have to work harder to find it.
Okay, any final questions? Another second. Awesome. Well, I think that should do it for this series. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. You will be receiving the link for the post-evaluation survey. If you are interested in getting your plan for health points, please complete 5 out of the 6. They're located on the website, and I'll put it in the chat. By next Friday at midnight, the surveys will close. And with that, we will let you go. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, David, real quick. For those that are on for the White Before H points, you'll be receiving an email on Friday afternoon with where you stand currently. So that should give you an idea of what needs to be completed. So just giving you a heads up on that.
Thanks, Josh. And thank you, Amanda, for joining us.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.